I try to avoid that, but I think it's unavoidable.
You know, I can't do this forever. I've been doing it since I was 21. As you move into your 80s, you say, hey, that's...
Robert Redford has always been seen as one of Hollywood's most respected leading men, an actor, director, and activist whose charm and talent made him an icon. But behind his polished image, Redford has never been afraid to speak his mind. Over the years, he's quietly revealed what it was really like working with some of the so-called legends of Golden Age Hollywood. And while fans remember those stars as untouchable giants, Redford paints a very different picture. From massive egos to unprofessional behavior, he has exposed stories that reveal the darker, jerk-filled side of old Hollywood. To understand Robert Redford's shocking honesty about some of Hollywood's biggest names, you first have to step back into the so-called Golden Age. This was the era of glamorous premieres, endless cigarette smoke curling through studio lots, and stars whose faces were more famous than world leaders. On the surface, it looked like magic, a dream factory where everyone was beautiful, talented, and larger than life. But Redford, who came of age during the transition between old Hollywood and new Hollywood in the 1960s, saw things few outsiders ever did. He witnessed the clash between artistry and ego, between the carefully manufactured images the studios pushed and the harsh realities behind the scenes. Redford's own early career was marked by awe and disillusionment. Like many young actors, he grew up idolizing the greats of the previous generation. These were performers who commanded the screen with such force that they seemed immortal. Yet when Redford found himself on sets with some of these so-called legends, he realized that the golden in Golden Age often referred only to the shine of publicity, not the character of the people working under those lights. He has recalled moments where older actors, still clinging to their fading stardom, would belittle newcomers simply out of insecurity. To them, a fresh face like Redford was a threat. Instead of offering mentorship or encouragement, they cut him down with sarcasm, arrogance, or outright hostility. In later interviews, Redford didn't shy away from admitting that the old guard could be cruel, describing them as impossible or self-centered beyond reason. One of the things Redford despised most was how Hollywood often rewarded bad behavior. If you were a box office draw, you could treat crew members, co-stars, even directors with contempt, and the studio would still protect you. Redford saw assistants berated for minor mistakes, extras ignored as if they weren't human, and directors forced to cater to stars who showed up late or refused to cooperate. It was a system built on ego, and to Redford it represented the worst of what Hollywood could be. This was especially jarring for someone like Redford, who valued authenticity and collaboration. Coming from a modest background, he was born in Santa Monica in 1936 and raised primarily in Los Angeles. He had no illusions about wealth or status, making someone better than anyone else. In fact, his difficult youth gave him a strong sense of empathy, something he carried into his career. When he arrived in Hollywood, eager but wary, the arrogance of certain big shots struck him as both petty and poisonous. Redford also criticized the way some Golden Age stars lived double lives. They would present themselves as role models to the public, family men, patriots, or philanthropists, while privately indulging in reckless affairs, substance abuse, or cruel treatment of those around them. He saw firsthand how some of the biggest box office idols demanded total obedience from cast and crew, often humiliating people who couldn't defend themselves. In his view, this wasn't talent at work. It was narcissism running unchecked. But perhaps the most heartbreaking part of Redford's revelations is the way younger actors were often broken down instead of lifted up. Hollywood has always been competitive, but during that transitional era, the bitterness of fading stars collided with the ambition of newcomers in brutal ways. Redford admitted that as a young man, he often left sets feeling disillusioned, not by the work itself, which he loved, but by the cruelty of people he once admired. For him, the lesson was clear. Fame didn't equal kindness, and talent didn't excuse being a jerk. If anything, the Golden Age of Hollywood had produced a culture where some of the most celebrated names believed they were above basic decency. And while Robert Redford didn't name every single actor who mistreated him, He made sure the world knew that the shine of old Hollywood hid shadows that were darker than most fans ever imagined. The golden age of Hollywood painted a picture of perfection, grand movie sets, glowing premieres, and stars who seemed larger than life. Yet behind the velvet curtains, the relationships between actors were often bitter, and Robert Redford never shied away from admitting who he thought crossed the line. One name he brought up often was Steve McQueen, the king of cool. While McQueen was idolized by fans for his rebellious charisma, Redford found him difficult and selfish on set. According to Redford, McQueen's obsession with always being the center of attention made working with him unbearable. He allegedly rewrote scripts to make his character appear stronger than everyone else, leaving co-stars frustrated. Another name that came up was Kirk Douglas, who Redford respected as an actor but found hard to trust off-screen. Douglas was known for his intensity and competitive streak, and Redford once suggested that this energy often turned toxic. Rumors spread that Douglas would manipulate directors to favor him in scenes, creating tension on set. Though the two never had a public falling out, Redford later admitted that he avoided collaborating with Douglas after one particularly tense project. Redford also reportedly struggled with Marlon Brando, one of Hollywood's most iconic figures. While Brando's talent was undeniable, Redford viewed him as unpredictable, difficult, and sometimes even hostile toward fellow actors. Brando's habit of showing up late to filming and refusing to stick to scripts clashed with Redford's professional discipline. He wanted everything on his terms, Redford once remarked, describing how Brando's ego made set life miserable for others. These confessions peeled away the glossy image of Hollywood and revealed a darker truth. Even the most legendary actors carried reputations that left lasting scars on those around them. Redford's willingness to expose these so-called jerks not only shocked fans, but also reshaped how people viewed the supposed golden camaraderie of classic cinema. Hollywood during its golden era wasn't just about acting talent. It was about power, image, and the constant battle to stay relevant. Robert Redford, who entered the industry in the 1960s when many legends of the previous generation still held influence, quickly saw how egos often clashed behind closed doors. He didn't just face competitiveness, he witnessed betrayals, manipulation, and a toxic culture that often rewarded arrogance over collaboration. One figure he singled out was Frank Sinatra, a man adored by fans for his music and smooth charm, but feared by many in the industry. Redford reportedly revealed that Sinatra could be ruthless when his authority was questioned. Colleagues described him as someone who carried grudges and wasn't afraid to use his influence to silence or sideline people he disliked. Redford admired Sinatra's artistry, but felt that his controlling nature made him nearly impossible to work with on equal terms. Then there was Burt Reynolds, another name Redford associated with ego-driven behavior. Reynolds' rise to superstardom in the 1970s made him one of the most bankable actors of the time, but his confidence often spilled over into arrogance. Redford recalled moments where Reynolds seemed more interested in competing with fellow actors than building chemistry. Their professional relationship never fully blossomed because, in Redford's eyes, Reynolds lacked the humility needed for true collaboration. Even more shocking was Redford's candid view of Tony Curtis, a heartthrob of the 1950s. While audiences adored Curtis for his looks and charm, Redford felt his vanity made him shallow and difficult to respect as a peer. He once suggested that Curtis was more concerned about how he appeared on camera than how well he performed in a role. To Redford, this obsession with appearance undermined the artistry that serious actors worked so hard to preserve. Perhaps the most surprising revelation came when Redford talked about Charlton Heston, the star of Ben-Hur, and a man many saw as a symbol of Hollywood greatness. Redford respected Heston's screen presence, but privately felt that he lacked warmth and often dismissed others who didn't match his stature. He treated people beneath him like they didn't belong, Redford once remarked, pointing to Heston's tendency to let status dictate how he interacted with co-stars and crew members. These revelations highlighted a larger theme. Redford often pointed to Hollywood's golden image was built on shaky ground. Many of its stars were not as gracious, humble, or admirable as their public personas suggested. Instead, they were men driven by ego, power struggles, and a fear of losing their spotlight. For Redford, honesty about these experiences wasn't meant to tarnish legacies, but to show that even the most glamorous figures were deeply flawed. By lifting the curtain, Redford painted a more complicated picture of old Hollywood, one where fame didn't always bring out the best in people, but sometimes the very worst. As Robert Redford grew older, he realized that his career had been shaped not just by the roles he played, but by the people he chose to work with, and equally the people he chose to avoid. By speaking openly about the biggest jerks of Golden Age Hollywood, he risked alienating fans who still idolize those figures. Yet for Redford, honesty mattered more than protecting illusions. He understood that behind the glitz and glamour, the industry was often cruel, competitive, and unforgiving. Redford's reflections weren't born from bitterness, but from experience. He had fought hard to carve out a career on his own terms, resisting the studio system that often forced actors into roles for profit rather than artistry. Unlike some of the men he criticized, Redford valued integrity and creative freedom over ego and dominance. He once explained that real respect came not from demanding it, but from earning it through one's work. Discipline and respect for others. One reason his words carried weight was that he had nothing left to prove. By the time he began revealing his unfiltered views on old Hollywood, Redford was already a legend. With films like Butch Cassidy and The Sundance Kid, All the President's Men, and The Sting, he had built a reputation not only as a leading man, but also as a filmmaker and activist who pushed for meaningful cinema. His Sundance Film Festival, which gave independent filmmakers a platform, was a direct response to the toxic, profit-driven culture he saw in traditional Hollywood. Critics of Redford argued that speaking ill of dead stars was unfair, as they could no longer defend themselves. But supporters saw it differently. His candor helped strip away the false perfection that old Hollywood often sold. In doing so, he gave fans a more realistic understanding of how the industry operated. Redford's goal wasn't to destroy legacies, but to remind audiences that talent doesn't excuse cruelty, and fame doesn't erase flaws. What makes his revelations so compelling is that they also reflect Redford's own philosophy. He believed that true artistry requires humility, patience, and collaboration. When he saw actors like Tony Curtis obsess over looks or Charlton Heston treat others with disdain, it confirmed his belief that the business could easily corrupt even the most talented performers. By exposing this, he wasn't only pointing fingers, he was warning future generations of actors about the dangers of ego. Today, Redford's legacy isn't just tied to his films, but also to his courage in speaking truth. While many of his contemporaries stayed silent out of fear of backlash, Redford chose transparency. That choice may have cost him friendships or admiration from certain circles, but it also solidified his reputation as one of Hollywood's most authentic voices. In the end, Redford's words reveal a larger truth. The golden age of Hollywood wasn't golden for everyone. Behind the silver screen were power struggles, betrayals, and egos so large they cast shadows over entire productions. By exposing the biggest jerks he encountered, Redford left behind not just performances, but lessons. Lessons about humility, respect, and the importance of keeping one's humanity in an industry that often strips it away. And there you have it, the untold side of Robert Redford's Hollywood journey, and the shocking truths he revealed about the so-called legends of the Golden Age. It turns out, even the most glamorous era had its share of egos, feuds, and unforgettable clashes. What do you think? Was Redford brave to expose these stories, or should some secrets have stayed buried in Hollywood's past? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We read every one of them. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe for more untold Hollywood stories, and ring the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Until next time, thanks for watching.